And welcome back to Caleb's Corner, and today we are looking at our very first figures from the Mcfarlane DC Multiverse line with the Superman vs. Armored Batman figures, inspired by their respective looks from The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Now, I'm super excited to open these guys up because that's one of my favorite comic books ever written. I read it annually every year. I do a reread. I love that book to death, so I'm super excited to get these guys out of the packaging. On the front of the package, you can see the two figures encased in their packaging. On the side, you'll see the Superman vs. Armored Batman. On the back, you do get a photograph of the two figures, and then on the bottom side, you'll get photographs of the rest of the figures from this particular wave of the Mcfarlane Multiverse line. And without further ado, let's get them out of the box and take a closer look. Alright, here is everything out of the box for the Superman vs. Armored Batman 2-pack, and I have to say, I'm quite impressed with these figures on first impressions. They look fantastic, though I guess we can get to that in a second. Let's start with accessories. You really only get one actual accessory with this 2-pack of Batman vs. Superman, though technically you get 6. I would really only argue that you actually get the one. The first two of these 6 accessories are going to be these trading cards here of photographs of the figures of Batman and Superman, which on the back actually do have character bios and a little write-up. So if you want, you can pause the video right now and read those write-ups for the characters themselves. But they are just glorified photographs that are pretending to be trading cards. Get rid of them. No one wants them. You do also get these 2 black stands with pegs, so you can actually peg them into the bottom of the figure's feet so you can help stabilize them while you're displaying them and posing them for your shelf. But they are ugly and are really plain, so no one wants them, so get rid of them. This is worthless. The only thing I would actually consider to be an accessory out of this 2-pack would be this stand here. So there's 4 pegs, so you can actually peg into the bottom of the feet of both figures and display them. There's some ruined rubble, ruined pipe, and some tires mixed in with rubble, and it looks good except for the fact that it's just all gray and there's not a lot of like paint work being done here, so it kind of just bleeds into this big gray mass. This is the only accessory I would consider an accessory, though it would, I would say, need some more paint. And as I'm sure you can tell, there is one more thing I did pull out of the box here, which would be this art background, which looks nice at first, and it would combine really well with that rubble base that we get, so you can set up this cool little diorama on your shelf when you display these guys. However, because of the way they adhere everything to the back card art of this package, when I unboxed it, it just ripped huge swaths of the design off, and it's just huge ruined pieces now, because of the way they adhered everything to the art, so that sucks. And with accessories out of the way, let's go ahead and get these guys off the stand and take a closer individual look, and let's start with Armored Batman. Alright, so for articulation here, you will get your head to actually go back and forward on that ball joint, which is nice. His head will look up about this far, which is not too bad, and down that far, not much, but you get a little bit. You do get 360 spin out of that, and you actually do get quite a bit of attitude out of this guy. You get some really nice side-to-side pivot, and there's some really nice nuance you can pull out of that articulation from the head, which is great. His shoulder will go up to about a 90-degree angle, and there's no bicep cut, and there is a little bit of a butterfly joint, though it's barely there. I wouldn't even really consider it. You do get a 90-degree on the single jointed elbow, which does pivot all the way around from there. You do get no forearm cut, and you do get articulated hands. They barely pivot. It's not much. You do get about that far forward and that far back, just about. And as for the diaphragm, you do get a little bit of a crunch, though it's honestly really minimal, so I don't really want to mention it, but it moves a little bit. It goes about that far back and about that far forward. It goes nowhere forward. You get the tiniest bit amount backwards, so it's there hardly. You get a little bit of play. You do get more side to side than you actually do front to back. As for the leg articulation, the codpiece and the belt are actually made of a separate soft material than the rest of the figures, which I think is odd overall for a figure. So his legs will go about that far forward standard. However, if you rotate that upper thigh, you do get a much further kick upwards. As for backwards, Batman will go about that far backwards there, and then you do get a double jointed knee, which isn't bad. You get past 90 but not kicking himself in the butt, and then you do get no upper thigh cut, and you get no calf cut, and you do get his feet to fold back about that far, and they will go about that far forward. And you do also get an articulated toe, though it cuts really weird into the sculpt, but it's there. As for the paint job and sculpt of this figure, I think the sculpt looks really wicked. You're getting these really nice weathered sculpt work details and some really nice pins and rivets into the armor. You do get this really nice texture, like almost like a canvasy texture on the under armor, which you can see in the shoulders and on the legs here and on the arms of the undersuit. And the cape actually surprised me. It's not as hard and rigid as I thought it was going to be. It is plastic, though it is flexible. You can move it quite a bit, and it does have this really nice, like heavy fabric canvas texture running all the way through it. It's gorgeous. As for paint, I think he is a little lacking. He's not bad by any means, but you're not going to get any crazy washes or dry brushes here. Everything is pretty much as is mold color wise. You're not getting any other crazy extra paint work here, though he is sculpted to the nine. The sculpt is honestly fantastic, and the paint that is here is super clean. The whites are perfect, and the flesh tone looks great as well. My one last note for Batman here is that he does come with his right hand being molded for like a trigger finger hands, and he doesn't come with anything to put there. Like there's no grapple gun or anything. So I thought maybe the initial like individual release of this Armored Batman look had a grapple gun, and I double checked and he doesn't. So I can't tell you why he has a trigger finger hand, but he has one and it's strange. Now on to Superman. For his head here, he will look up about this far and down this far, and he does also have this really nice ball joint like Batman, so you can get quite a bit of nuance and like lean side to side here on that ball joint, and you will get his head to go all the way around, of course. And he does have a butterfly joint, and like Batman, it is really stiff and kind of minimal, but it does exist. It's there. Shoulder will go past a 90-degree angle, which is awesome. You don't get a bicep cut, and his shoulder will go all the way around. You do get a single jointed elbow, which gives you 90, and a pivot at that point. No forearm cut, and his hands will go all the way around. And unlike Batman's, his are articulated a little bit better. You'll go about that far backwards here on his wrist joint, and about this far forward. A lot more movement than Batman gets. For the diaphragm joint, he will go about that far backwards, which isn't too bad, and then that far forward, he definitely goes further backwards than he does forward. And when you do crank him all the way back, you do get some gapping there on the diaphragm ball peg joint, which is a bit unfortunate. And because of the soft plastic used on the belt and trousers area here, just like on Batman, it doesn't sit super tight to the figure, especially on Superman here. You can see it's not super tight. You can actually crush it inwards, and you do get some gapping on the sides. As for Superman's lower body here, he will kick out about that far forward. However, you can rotate the upper thigh and kick out that far forward, and you will get some gapping there on the soft plastic on the upper thigh, where you can see some of the articulation work where that figure sculpt is getting cut out. But he does kick out way far to the side, so if you strictly do no upper thigh twist, you're only going to get him to kick out about that far forward. You will get him to go that far back, which is quite a ways, which is nice to see. You will see that soft plastic bend there as well. I don't know why Mcfarlane uses these soft plastic air quote diaper areas, but it is what it is. You do get perfect splits out of Superman, which is fantastic. Again, you're going to see that soft plastic get really stressed on that side there. It won't really damage it per se, but you do get perfect splits out of him here, which is great. You do get a pretty solid double jointed knee. Better than Batman, he will go past that kind of awkward kneeling position here. You could get more range out of this double jointed knee if they cut maybe just a little bit out of the back of the hamstring on Superman's upper legs here, but it's not bad. And for Superman, I would argue this is totally acceptable here. You do get no calf cut, however, there's no articulation there. And for his feet, he will go that far forward and about this far back, and like Batman, you will get that articulated toe. As for a paint job for Superman here, like Batman, most of it is just going to be molded plastic. You're not seeing a lot of paint work outside of the flesh tone, and his face is painted super well. And honestly, on this face is probably the cleanest paint job I've seen on eyes ever, except like one really tiny issue where there's a little bit of red peeking through in the upper eyelid on his right eye. But other than that, it's incredibly clean on the face. He looks great. It's just molded plastic though for the most part. I don't think Superman necessarily needs a wash because of the nature of his brighter color. However, maybe some edge highlight painting would have been appreciated, especially on the brighter areas of the costume. And the sculpt work though, it's fantastic. I keep moving this guy around and noticing all the little wrinkles that you get through the blue bodysuits throughout the entire figure. You get the like really nice boot wrinkles on the sides here. The sculpt is just so well executed, and both figures are just so faithful to how Frank Miller drew these characters from the Dark Knight Returns comic book. It looks like you just ripped these right off of the page. They're incredible. And then for Superman's cape as well, you do get all these really nice wrinkles, kind of like this windswept look. I guess you could say the wrinkles are a tad bit flat, maybe some more volume and dynamic variation between the depth and peaks of the cape itself would have been nice. But unlike Batman's cape, the Superman's cape is going to be a lot more stiff on its material of plastic, whereas Batman gets a much more flexible cape. Did also notice some imperfections on the top of the collarbone of Superman's bodysuit here. It looks like what might be some mold imperfections. I'm not 100% sure. It could be a paint error. It doesn't ruin the figure in any way, shape, or form, but it was something I wanted to notice in case it was a consistent quality issue. And one last note for Superman here, I noticed that his hands are actually interchangeable, because in the single release of the Superman figure, he actually comes with flat flying hands, and he does not come with that in the 2-pack, which is a huge shame because the extra hands would have added not only value to the 2-pack, but also the amount of dynamic poses we could have gotten out of Superman flying for our displays. So I don't know why they were included. I wish they were, especially because it's the exact same body mold and it's built to swap out hands. It's just something I don't understand. I wish we would have gotten that. Here are the figures posted up onto their rubble base so you can see what that looks like all together. Alright, final thoughts for the Mcfarlane DC Multiverse Superman vs. Armored Batman Dark Knight Returns 2-pack, which is a mouthful. I really love this 2-pack. I think it's really, really strong. The articulation is solid enough. The sculpt work is gorgeous. I can't stop looking at these guys. And I think they really faithfully carry the resemblance from Frank Miller's original artwork. They're stunning. My only big gripes for this 2-pack are going to be the lack of true accessories, because we're not counting the trading card or we're not counting the stands. I would have loved to see some interchangeable hands for Superman. I also would have liked to have seen maybe a different facial expression for Superman. He kind of has this weird middle of a sentence look face sculpted onto him, so I would have loved to have seen a more neutral face instead, or give us this face and an exchangeable head that is a lot more neutral than what we're getting here. Batman also would have benefited a lot from having an accessory, especially with his open gripping trigger finger hand, so a grapple hook or a batarang, or even like the kryptonite arrow that he has Oliver shoot Superman with in the comic book would have been a welcome inclusion, but unfortunately we don't get a lot in terms of accessories, though from what I've seen that seems to be a trope with Mcfarlane figures in general throughout most of their lines. But overall, I think this is a really awesome 2-pack and worth it, especially if you love that comic book as much as I do. And I absolutely adore Frank Miller's artwork, so it's a pleasure having these in the collection. So, for a final verdict, we're going to give this figure 2-pack an 8 out of 10. Absolutely worth it. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I really do appreciate it. If you liked the video, feel free to give it a like. If you have any figure suggestions of stuff you want to see me review in the future, feel free to tell me down below in the comments section. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And as always, I will see you next time right here at Caleb's Corner.